And welcome to the Scrutiny Inquiry Panel, Antisocial Behaviour, and we're meeting online primarily, and we're here today to look at the follow-up to the report that was produced and where action has been taken, and we're going to have that a little bit further. But if first of all I can go through the agenda. Apologies for absence. Are there any, please, Michelle?
There's been no apologies for absence, but Alison Anthony is unable to make it, who's the cabinet member, but she's seen the report and is happy with it.
Okay, thank you. Disclosure of personal prejudicial interest. Anybody have anything to declare? No? Okay. And just remind colleagues that we got prohibition of whip votes. So if there has been any party whips to make a declaration at this point, but I'm not seeing anything, so we carry on to the minutes, which have been circulated. So that's the minutes of the meeting on the 18th of October. They have been circulated already. So first of all, if I go through for accuracy, I don't think there's anything on page 1 or page 2. And the matters arising really relate to the report that's on here. So if I could just get an indication that everybody's happy with the minutes as they're suggested. So thank you very much. That's great. So we move on to public questions. Have there been any, Michelle?
There's been no public questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we can move on to the substance of the meeting today, which is the Antisocial Behaviour Inquiry Impact and Follow-up Report. So if I could pass over to the officers to take us through that report. And can I just check with the officers if there are any questions or comments? Would you like them as you go through the report, or shall we keep them to the end?
Thank you, Chair. It's just Jane. It's only me in the room with Michelle. I'm happy to take the questions as they come through. If anyone wants to stop as I'm going through them, take any questions, or at the end, happy to do either. It's entirely up to you how you would like to handle it, Chair.
Okay, so we'll take questions and comments as we go through, and if there are any, if you could flag up either usual way by raising your hand on the screen virtually, or giving us a shout, that would be great. Thanks ever so much. So if I can hand back to you, Jane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to go through some highlights of the report and some of the actions, just so from an officer perspective, you've just got me as the lead officer here today, because there's a lot of annual leave that's going on. My colleague Julie Gosney's joined us on screen, who's been active in a lot of the actions that's taken place, and give some more detail, especially around the front facing and the engagement side of it. And my other colleague Kelly Richards, who is principal officer in Child and Family, is working with the CMET team and youth teams. She will be joining us shortly, but she's had a medical appointment, so she'll be joining a bit later on. But as I say, hopefully we can cover off any questions as they come. So the report you've got in front of you today, obviously it's the standard one around the impact report on the antisocial behaviour scrutiny inquiry, which I have to say was really in depth, but has really proved to be so useful in many different ways. But just to highlight some of the things about what's changed since the report was presented to Cabinet, and then how we're doing against the agreed actions, and how we're in terms of implementation, and then the impact of the scrutiny inquiry. So if I go to section 2, really, it's about what's changed since the report. I think the biggest piece of work that we've done is established a whole council approach to tackling antisocial behaviour, because it is much, much more, as the inquiry showed us, than just one coordinator in a small team. Actually, there are a huge amounts of activity and staff in lots of different teams across the whole council who makes a really valuable contribution. And actually, by bringing us all together and working more collaboratively and sharing our resources has really, really helped drive this forward. So we've set up the Swansea Council Community Safety Forum. So it's wider than antisocial behaviour, because it is mainly around the community safety, but obviously antisocial behaviour is a key focus in it. And it's chaired by our Chief Executive, so that actually it gives some credence to the importance of actually how we all work together in a collaborative way across the council and take a one council approach. Purpose of the group is leading and coordinating actions around community safety and ASB, and then how we would work together to prioritise resources to make sure, that's the tagline for Safer Swansea, is we make Swansea a safer, more cohesive and vibrant place to work and live and visit. So we've set that up, and that group has had oversight of the action plan that was agreed after the scrutiny inquiry through Cabinet. So they've been the group that's driven forward all of the different actions, so from across all different parts of the council. The other thing that has changed is that we have had confirmation of the Police and Crime Commissioner's funding. So they've confirmed the grant is in place as usual, because I know that came up around the grant funding as part of the inquiry, but the amount remains unchanged, and that's for 25-26, pending a review from the PCC office of how they will fund and how that funding will align to the PCC priorities. So whilst they've confirmed funding just for 1 year, because I know there is an action in the report around long-term longevity of funding, it is quite hopeful that through the work, and we've set up a subgroup which includes the PCC office as well as wider partners of the Safer Swansea Partnership, to look at how that funding should be spent to make the best value of it, but actually to see that contribution for further future funding. So that's been really positive. At one point we didn't think we were going to get it, and then we thought we'd only get 6 months of it, but actually they've recognised that the need for the long-term funding issue that came up as part of the inquiry, and will start to work with us to work out what that looks like across all of the different partners, not just us as a council. And we've really taken the opportunity to, with the change in the funding agreements, to start to review the current partnership arrangements and how we manage antisocial behaviour and improve those relationships and roles and responsibilities, and understand is what should we do as a council, what should the police be doing, and what should we be doing together in that space. So it's really, really clear. So that's started, but is still in progress. But it's been really positive because already we've seen opportunities we can work differently, especially around with young people, is one of the things that has come up, but actually with our wider partners in housing, which also was brought up as part of the review as well. So we've got the regular meetings with South Wales Police Local Authority in place to look at the monthly position and monitor them, and escalate an escalation route to senior managers to make sure that we are all understanding what's going on, and so that we can take action as early as possible. And then in terms of the partnership landscape, because as we talked about, this was an inquiry about how the council tackles antisocial behaviour, but it's also very much present in the partnership landscape. So what does that look like? So we've also done a review of the Safer Swansea Partnership so that we're clear on the function. We've got the right people around the room and around the table, and really clear governance arrangements in place. And that the groups are then feeding in, they're relevant and feeding in, and the escalation is, so there's no duplication. And what does that look like on the ground for, you know, so it's better for people. One of the things that has come up as part of the inquiry was around businesses and how that they should be really included in those partnerships arrangements, as they play a key role in it, as well as the statutory partners and the third sector partners. So they've been feeding in as well, and RSLs and how we actually link in those with those arrangements as well. So that's been a really good and really positive piece of work. In terms of, I just go into section 3, in terms of the 24 recommendations, Cabinet agreed to implement 22 of them, and I'm really proud and pleased of all the work that's gone on across the council in terms of the excellent progress that's been made. So to date, 12 of the recommendations are complete and are going really, really well, and 10 are remaining in progress, but with good progress against them. And so I'll pick up some really good examples of what that looked like. So in terms of what has been the impact of the scrutiny inquiry, I think it, as I said at the beginning, it really highlighted that as a council, that there is a really clear commitment to addressing ASB across all of the different parts of the council. But those issues are multifaceted, as it came up in the inquiry, and they require the input across a wide range of services, not just one. So the impact of this aligned to that wider piece of work that we were already thinking about in terms of with Cabinet and Corporate Management team in looking at the broader impact of community safety and how we could facilitate this better through early intervention and prevention. So we don't want to wait for things to happen like a big massive pile of statistics around antisocial behaviour rising and rising and rising. What can we do differently and better together to intervene at the earliest possible point? So I think that's been one of the biggest impact of us actually recognising that it is multifaceted and it isn't just one team with one person doing it. It has got to be a whole council approach. So the establishment of the Community Safety Forum is the council's been a massive impact around and complements that wider partnership piece of work. But also I think with the impact of some of the work that has been done has been on the police data. So obviously the police hold the data for antisocial behaviour, and that has shown that there has been a reduction in ASB across Swansea. So which is, you know, there's lots of different factors what that might be the case, but I think that one of the ways of our different ways of working has got to be around has made a difference for that. And I know that in the report there are some real examples of what the engagement events and the partnership work that went on over the summer in the city centre, which we call the City Chill events, that I can pass to Julie for more information, and Hayley actually, because it sits in her portfolio around this. It's actually won a community safety overall award, which was about how we work differently and in partnership to actually address some of these behaviours and issues as they come up. So I think we've had some really positive success. I don't know if you want me to go through every one of the recommendations, Chair, or would you like me just to pause? I think I've just highlighted the big ones, but I could go to colleagues on the screen to give more detail around some of the significant pieces of work. Entirely up to you, Chair, how you'd like me to handle it.
I think unless anybody else has any contrary view, it might be worthwhile at that point stopping to see if there are any questions or comments that people would like to make. And then if, as appropriate, yourself and Julie could come in with responses, and Hayley if necessary. But one of the comments I'd make just by way of overview or introduction is that the scrutiny processes are there to bring about changes and improvements in the way in which council services is operating and so on. And it's pleasing to see that this particular one has got many impactful recommendations which are being implemented, and it's actually making a change to the life and quality of life of people of Swansea. So I think that's quite positive. But before I come back, I've got a few comments and questions I'd like to raise. But colleagues, are there any questions or comments you'd like to ask? No? Okay. So just a couple of points. First of all, in relation to the forum, Jane, the first question, I was interested to see how the forum then relates to the partnership that's already been in existence. I noticed that you've mentioned in your overview that the arrangements are being reviewed. Is it intended that the forum take over the work of the partnership, or where will the partnership and forums work together to achieve this? So maybe if you could just explore that a little bit more for me. And just on the forum itself, then I was looking to see, because as you've mentioned, the forum has met, the terms of reference have been agreed. I couldn't see anywhere in the public domain that we could view anything relating to the forum, the nature of the forum, composition of the forum, and in fact, as you say, the terms of reference. So I wondered whether it's intended at some point to make the work of the forum more publicly accessible.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's actually I could have put the terms of reference into the agenda pack. I didn't think of that because I think you're right. I do reference it, but I didn't put it in. Excuse me. They're not in the public domain at the moment, but I don't see why any reason why they couldn't be. But in terms of if I tackle the council forum and the community safety partnership first of all to understand, so we can understand. So what we were finding and what the scrutiny inquiry highlighted is that actually there's loads of work that goes on in the council that probably isn't being represented in a partnership space because people don't know about it. So the purpose of the forum is to as a council, to understand and coordinate and lead all of the council funded activity around preventing antisocial behaviour and the wider community safety, so that when we get into the partnership space, we speak as one council and one voice. So that's the purpose, and that, so that there's never an intention that one will overtake another. But it's, I guess, colleagues would be familiar with the tackling poverty, the poverty agenda. So if we've got an internal poverty forum that coordinates all of the different, because it's the same principle, isn't it? It cuts across all departments in the council. So we've taken that as a blueprint and rolled it out for community safety. That's basically what we did. So, and there's a poverty partnership, and then there's so we as a council speak as one voice and are much more coordinated, rather than us go into a partnership space with only half a story, because actually that's not a good use of council resources or time, and actually it doesn't present the council in the best possible way. So that's, so we still got the two. Sorry, Mike, I'm just to remember. So and in terms of publishing what that looks like and the membership, I can forward the terms of reference and membership of the internal forum to Michelle for circulation. That's not a problem at all. I could have put it in the pack, but it's not published on the internet, the council website as yet. But it's, I think there's there are two recommendations about publishing or making more public the work in of the council, which is in progress. That hasn't been done yet, because I guess probably we've been established since November time, so it's still early doors about what that, how we are developing and how we look at it. And the big focus of the has been established in the group, agreeing how we're going to work together, and actually making sure that we are responding to the antisocial behaviour recommendations. So whilst it's not done, I think it will be done. But what I'd like to do is, if when we create that, is that we create one for the partnership as well. So it's really clear this is the council's one, but actually that feeds in, and vice versa, as to the wider partnership space as well. Does that answer the question? Like, is that okay?
Yeah, it does. That's really clear. Thank you, Jane. And I think it's important in going forward to make sure that at least all councillors would be aware of the work of the forum and how that relates to the partnership. And I think it's something that all ward councillors get impacted by, isn't it, in relation to the danger, the impact, the possibility of antisocial behaviour taking place within our wards. So to be aware of the work of the forum would be helpful. Mark, you've put your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon all. I'm a member of the PCP, Police and Crime Commissioner panel. There's a seminar next week, which I will be attending, and we will be discussing future strategies regarding funding, amongst others. So I'm happy to give you an update once that's been completed. But it's very positive, and we're all on the same page, I'm glad to say. That's all I want to say. So if you want me to update you after the meeting, I'm more than happy to do so.
That's useful feedback. Jane, did you want to come back on that?
No, that's excellent. That's really good to hear, because actually it's good to hear that we're hearing the same things from different routes, isn't it? Because I'd heard similar, so it's really positive, and thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions at the moment? If not, I've got a couple more. Did we get any feedback as to the reasons why the recommendations, the two recommendations, weren't accepted by Cabinet?
Hold on, just bear with me 2 seconds. I think there was the one was around youth provision, I believe. Hold on a second, you'll just have to bear with me a sec whilst I find it.
That's fine. Yeah.
So there's definitely one around the provision. So how one of the recommendations was, oh, here we go. Oh, so there we are. I found the ones that, so recommendation 14 was one of them, and that was asking the Safer Swansea Partnership to investigate how to improve levels of reporting and incidents of ASB, including asking South Wales Police to consider the response times in relation to 101. So although that's a police action rather than a council action, so that's why we haven't reported on it, or it wasn't agreed by cabinet. However, that work is still going on in terms of the partnership space, and I know the police are actually looking at 101 and how it can be improved, and is it the Crime Stoppers, how could we use it, and how can people get in touch with the police in terms of you can use their Facebook and their social medias rather than having to get on the phone and one and you're in a queue, and all of those things up there. So that was an action around the police. That's why that one wasn't taken forward. And then the other one, here we go. Yeah, it was action number 17, and that was versus council. So it looked to increase the number of youth workers in Swansea with the aim of every community across the city and county of Swansea having a dedicated youth worker support. So obviously we have something. It's a shame Kelly's not on the call, but I know that Hayley's a cabinet member as well, can come in and help me out on this one. But basically we didn't take that one forward as a recommendation to agree because that requires funding, and that there is no additional funding actually to do that. So we have a hub model of 5 hubs, I think in terms of across the whole of Swansea, that is the youth provision, and there are detached youth workers that come out of that and work in the community. That's not, we're saying, so rather than just say, well, we're just going to replicate a hub in every single area of Swansea because we just couldn't possibly afford it, but there is still work that we're undertaking and thinking about of actually how do we increase the reach of youth workers for and to support young people in our communities in the widest possible sense with the budget envelope that we've got, or those opportunities of working differently together, because it's not just the council resource that we have in terms of youth provision. There is a whole raft of volunteers and third sector organisations who also church groups, all sorts that actually provide youth provision. So it's about really of us, it's made us think, so it wasn't taken forward because obviously we couldn't take it forward in that, but it's made us think about what does that look like and what does that, and how do we support that to grow. So that's why those 2 weren't taken forward, but that's not meaning that we're not still thinking about them and they're not actually valid points. Shall I pause? If I pause there, because I think.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. Hayley, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, yeah, just really to agree with what Jane says. Obviously that you know, times are really tough and budgets are really tight, and you know, it is around affordability. That's not to say that we're not really supportive of youth work, but what we do have is the early help hub models, 5 youth clubs as well as a pop-up in Mayhill. And we have YHDOs, which are the Youth Hub Development Officers, attached to each of those early help hubs, but they also go into schools. So every child in Swansea would have the opportunity to engage with a youth worker. They work very well and very closely with our pastoral teams within school settings as well. That's not to say that it's easily accessible, as in going to the physical youth club nights. If you live, for example, in my ward and you have to get to Chatloin or to Bryn Hyfryd, you know, I'm not saying that it's easy by any means, but children will have those opportunities. They do lunchtime sessions or break time sessions, so children are engaged. But again, what Jane was talking about, we are looking at it, and I feel really strongly about investing in our young people. So I will continue to bang that drum and to see what we can do with the resources that we have. And you know, obviously I am councillor in St Thomas Ward, and we've set up a youth club voluntarily with a group of parents, and we've had support and advice and information from our youth service and also our play team to support us in making sure that we're able to provide what young people need in our community. And I know that offer, you know, is open to anybody in communities who would be interested in doing something similar. So just to reassure you that there are lots of things that are going on.
And Julie, I noticed you've put your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wondered whether also to mention the coast-funded projects, Jane, you know,
Yes,
sort of
yes.
evening, weekends, school holidays and so on.
Awesome.
I think, you know, in terms of our partners and third sectors, you know, like Hayley mentioned some examples in her own area, but, you know, the provision, when you looked at that whole package, you know, not always the councillor may be best placed to provide certain things in certain areas where there are already other third sector established groups. And I think coast-funded was a massive help to some of those third sector groups and provided, you know, a raft of, you know, a really varied provision for children and young people. So I thought it just, you know, important to mention that as well, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. I think we all agree, don't we, that it's important to have positive, constructive activities for young people and others to be engaged in, rather than to be, as it were, sort of treating the after effects of the antisocial behaviour as trying to sort of prevent it in the first place. So, yeah, anything that we can do, I think, in your role as Cabinet Member Hayley, to support you in putting in place those arrangements, and Julie and the officers, then I think that's important for us to be able to do. Any other questions at all or comments from colleagues? You mentioned schools, and there's one of the recommendations relating to the fact that there would be some work going on in schools. And I think, for those of us, I think it's recommendation 5. Those of us who are involved as school governors would be aware that antisocial behaviour within the school context has unfortunately increased over recent years, and just want to kind of say that I would, from my point of view, would see that as something that needs to be continued to push forward in terms of the engagement. I know it's a shame that, in a sense, it's not the council-related matter, but withdrawal of funding from the School Beat Cymru, where officers are not able to be funded now to go into schools to provide that, building up a relationship and dealing with important issues like grooming and bullying and drug abuse and substance abuse and so on. I think that's very unfortunate, but as I said, that's not something that we can deal with. But so just again, want to see the as it said, it's intended to roll out the programme to the next round of schools. So we look forward to being able to see positive impact as a result of that. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that.
Chair, sorry, can I come in? Is that okay?
Sorry, Jane. Yes, come in.
Sorry, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I think that so recommendation 5 is was especially looking at the younger age group as well as the older, because we tend to focus on comprehensive age, but actually I think they're looking at the with our school colleagues in Kate's team, it was going into the year 6 and into the primary, so really going into that preventative approach. But just to say, and you're absolutely right in terms of the school beat and the changes in funding there, but we do have, obviously you'll see it in the report reference, and you met the young people who work with the CMET, the child exploited missing team, and actually they really do take a multi-agency approach, working with police in with our schools, sort of, so how actually can we mitigate that in the best possible way together. So it is, yeah, it's unfortunate around the funding, but in terms of that partnership space and multi-agency work, that is still going on, and that's obviously, there's something in terms of safeguarding that we just desperately need to continue and make sure that there's a strong focus in working together on those issues, which obviously are in place and are remaining. Sorry, thanks.
Hayley, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just to add as well, we do the crucial crews. I know the community safety team, they do that with primary school age children, and that's over a number of days. They've held it more recently down the Waterfront Museum, which has been an excellent venue for them. But that's been a multi-agency approach as well, not just council departments, but external as well. And that really helps with those relationships. Jane was talking about the CMET team as well, and I know that they were heavily involved in the Swansea City Chill events with the partnership and involvement team, as well as the police, and many members of our Aging Well and our youth service as well. And that was the overall winner in the inaugural Safer Communities Award. It was such an excellent example of partnership working, and had a really positive impact on our city centre, and the ASB reporting, you know, went down enormously. It seemed to have had the, you know, one of the desired effects then of that project. And also talking about the awards, our collaboration station, where our partnership and involvement team, that, you know, they set that up, co-produced with members of our Aging Well team and partners who are involved in the Aging Well steering group. But that's grown. You know, it's been massive. You know, they get a hate crime police drop in, our community safety team. It's been hugely beneficial, and we've recently popped up in St David's now as well, so there's a bigger space, and we've got even more teams coming in and working from there. CMET have been able to use it with young people that they're working with in the city centre. You know, they do find that they don't have a space of an evening that they can, you know, utilise with young people, so that's been another positive, being able to have that space available to them. And if I could just touch on another one, and I know it sounds like I'm bragging a little bit here, but the Equalities, Inclusion and Cohesion award went for our afternoon teams, which was actually an idea that came from Gosainen Youth Club. And that was an idea that came from young people themselves who wanted to change the way that members of the community were thinking about them. So they decided, right, you know, we need them to know that we're not all, you know, hooligans, and we're not all up to mischief. You know, what can we do to bring them in and to get them to sit around a table and to speak to us, and, you know, to see if we can break down those barriers. And they set up an afternoon teens initiative. It was hugely successful, and actually some conversation starters, and they found that they had far more in common than they believed. And we rolled that out right across Swansea. A lot of myth busting went into it, and it was hugely successful. On the very last event, and I will stop talking in a second, you know, there was over 100 people that attended that event, and the youngsters were absolutely fantastic, and it just really changed perceptions. And I just think we need to be doing more of that intergenerational work. You know, our youngsters can be teaching, you know, some older members of our residents, you know, a thing or two maybe about the digital world, you know, and our older members can be, you know, passing on their skills to our younger members of society. And it's just hugely, you know, of equal benefit, really, isn't it? So, yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, just want to make a point that hopefully people don't view this as seeing that we're focusing on young people and children as being the only source of these sort of issues and subject to that area. And I know that recommendation 3 in terms of RSLs and housing associations, you know, I'm still getting complaints from some residents about behaviour of others within that context. Again, it's not something that we as a council can have direct control over, but you know, let's hope that what we've been doing and the work that you, Jane, and others are doing to encourage them to be tackling this is having some benefit. I don't know if you want to come back on that at all, Jane.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hayley, as well, for highlighting all of the great work. So in the report, there are links for the press releases and the stories for all of the bits of work that we talked about around City Chill, around the intergenerational working, because they did come up as part of recommendations going forward, and also the wider approach of prevention around scams and things like that, so so you can really see what we're doing. But in terms of recommendation 3, I think is mainly was for housing. So Carol's obviously head of service for housing, but they've done a piece of work in housing to they used to have a council ASB team that was just worked for the housing, the council stock housing rather than the RSLs. So they've done a restructure and re-looked at that team, and they're now called a community liaison team. I think it's worth noting, because when we talk to housing colleagues, because they really want to focus on that prevention. So by being called an ASB team, if you've got an ASB officer knocking your door, immediately you're going to get somebody, you've done something wrong, it's too late. So they're about community liaison, and that is about bringing the communities together. So it's very much around, kind of fits in with the engagement work and the involvement work that Jules and her team does as well, in terms of actually, if you bring people together through something very, very simple, a simple activity, actually it builds better relationships, and then in terms of that prevention approach. So they've changed their approach in house, and that's quite recent that's there, in the housing department across the council. And really, we're really working more closely with them to understand how we can build on what that looks like, not just in our housing estates, but actually wider in our communities, and then how that feeds into the RSL. So they've re-established the RSL link working, and that's with Mark as the Director of Place and Housing, so that brings those relationships in there. So that's been a real positive as well, but actually how we can work together. The other examples of working with housing that's come out of it, because I know that we were really worried about, we haven't got an independent chair, if we've got to do a case review. Well, actually, housing, would they commission independent chairs? So we were like, well, I'm not going to do something separately, we will do that together. So if we need mediation or independent chairs for that, because I know that did come up as a worry from the inquiry, but actually when we sat down, we were like, well, we can do this together, it's very easy. So some real positives. And as you say, it's not just about young people, it's not just about people on housing estates, it's the whole communities. How do we take that whole enabling communities approach to working together for the best interest of everybody? And I think that's really coming through. I feel very proud as an officer of the work, because it's doing the right thing for people, and I think that's something we've just always got to bear in mind. That's why we're here, and actually it doesn't matter what part of the council you sit in, it's about how we work, we roll our sleeves up and work together. So I think that's been my positive takeaway from all of it, even though it's a great work, there's still lots to do, but all really positive. Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
That's right. Any comments or further questions from colleagues? No, if not, if I can just make a few final comments. I think, as I mentioned in my introduction, the role of scrutiny is to actually bring about changes and positive changes and to have an impact. And I think the proof of the pudding is certainly here in the figures that have been provided in paragraph 4.4 in your overarching report, which shows that the police data indicates that there's been a reduction in ASB. And I think we need to be focusing on, as I mentioned earlier, prevention rather than dealing with the aftermath of it and the consequences of it. So I think it's really exciting to see that this particular scrutiny inquiry panel has made a positive input into this area, and an impact, hopefully, which will lead to an improvement in quality of life for all residents across the city and county of Swansea, because that's what we're here for, isn't it? To see people's lives being improved. So in sort of my final comments, just like to thank Terry for his chair, and hope that he makes a good recovery soon, and to you colleagues for your help. And Jane and Julie, if you could pass on our thanks as a scrutiny panel for the work that officers have been doing and are doing to continue pushing forward on this particular issue. And Hayley, in terms of the role that you've got in terms of the role with promoting positive inputs in relation to sort of youth and other work that will help in that area. So thank you for that as well. So if we can then just to pass on our thanks to those, and Michelle, looking to you now in terms of what the next step would be, whether there is a need for a follow-up meeting at any point, whether we'd review the work in a year's time, or whether it would be on the basis of correspondence that we can see updates on what is happening.
Thanks, Mike. Just to say that just to find out if the panel are happy with progress, which I think you've sort of indicated you are, but if you're happy with how progress is going. Obviously, they're not going to be able to have sort of complied to every of your recommendations, but they're all in progress, and quite a number are completed. So if you're happy, you can sign off the inquiry at this point as being happy with progress. If there's anything specific you'd like to follow up on, you can do that via the Scrutiny Programme Committee. So if there are any particular areas you'd like to have a little bit of a follow up on in a year's time, they can pick that up when they speak to the appropriate Cabinet members. So if there's anything that any of you feel that would need a little bit of follow up, then if you'd let me know, I'll make sure that's noted, and we'll note it in the letter as well.
Anything, colleagues, or are you okay with that? I think the only point that was the one I made earlier on in relation to information about the work of the forum, just to make sure that we're okay with that. Matthew, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think, maybe in 12 months' time, reviewing the figures as well to see where they're going. Are they still continuing to drop? Or a number of reported ASB incidents, that sort of thing, just to see if we're going in the right direction. I don't think you'll ever, unfortunately, eradicate antisocial behaviour, but it seems as though it's making an impact as we stand. So, yeah, I think that would be I don't want to say KPI, but that would be a sort of indication one way, wouldn't it, Chair?
Good point. Yeah, thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else then, thank you, Michelle, for your support. And Hayley, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just, in obviously my colleague Alison Anthony's absence, I just wanted to, just pass on thanks to her. I know she's been a real driving force in making sure that, actions are undertaken and that this work is progressed. And I know that, she's a real keen advocate for making sure that this isn't just a council. It does need a partnership approach. And, she's really keen to get that ASB coordination right. So, yeah, I know, just because she's done so much work and she's not able to be here today, just to pass on my thanks to her and to pass on my thanks to the panel as well, who have been excellent throughout, and I know there's been a massive piece of work. And we're very grateful to you. Thanks.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I declare the meeting closed, and thank you again for your attendance and your contributions, and wish you a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.